There are many ways that witches can protect themselves. And just like you would protect yourself physically, you, yourself, your property, and love from attack, like used by using locks, security gates, fences, and alarms, there are also a wide variety of protective techniques that we can use to protect ourselves energetically as well. So, whether you are newer to the idea of protection magic or you've been protecting yourself for a while through magic and you're just looking for some new ideas, there's going to be something for everyone in today's episode. So, merry meet, I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin, and in tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about different protection magic techniques that you can try. So, saying hi to those who are joining us live, welcome everybody. Now, if you are here with us live, you can leave questions and comments in the chat, and we'll be having a Q&A at the end, just like always. And I'll also be watching the chat as we go. Make sure you leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video, just so we make sure it gets out to the feed of more people. So I'm going to dive in. There's a lot to talk about tonight. I have a lot of techniques to share. I see some people joining us in the chat. I see Kurt is here and Sonia and Jamie. So merry meet everybody. So welcome, and we are going to dive in. So the first thing that I want to talk about tonight is using herbs for protection. So using herbalism and magic is a highly, highly effective and powerful tool that you can use to aid yourself in your intentions. Now, when it comes to the idea of protection, herbs can be very powerful and they can be used to guard not just you or other people around you. They can also be used to protect your space. Just like all of these practices I'm going to be talking about tonight, they can extend from you to other people and also to property or possessions that you want to protect. Now, sage is probably one of the best herbs to use in order to dispel negativity. The mechanism of sage is that it raises the vibration of a space, and what that means is that any energies that are lingering in that space that are not of that higher vibration have no choice but to be dispelled or to leave that area in search of another area that more resonates with their energy. So we can get rid of these lower energy vibrations that way. Now, sage can be burned in a bundle or a stick. And the thing that I usually do with sage, and I usually use it in a bundle, and I'm going to show this right now, but though this particular stick that I have is not pure sage, and I'll talk about that in a moment, why sometimes we might choose other herbs. But if you have a sage stick, you can take it in a clockwise pattern around your space or around you. So if I wanted to purify and cleanse and protect myself, I would move this in a counterclockwise direction around myself in order to dispel any negative energies I don't want to be carrying. I can also take this around the perimeters of my room, going counterclockwise again to banish or dispel some of these negative energies. I can also do that around my property. I can do that around the car. So anything you're trying to protect, like if you were going to go on a long car trip, perhaps you'd want to protect the car. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention about sage is that if you are going to be using white sage, it's really important that you make sure that the sage that you're using is ethically sourced. So in this respect, kind of knowing where the source came from, buying from Native American or indigenous nations, or buying from a company that supports Native Americans and indigenous nations and indigenous producers. So I know for myself, the sage that we purchase, we actually get from a Native American man who owns a shop, and we know that all of his sage is ethically sourced, and so we feel safe about using it and feel good about using it. You can also grow your own if that's possible. It's not always possible for everybody, and it's not something that I'm able to do right now, and so it's easier for me to purchase the sage sticks. But that's what I would mention about sage. It's probably one of the number one go-tos that many people use. And as we're going through some of these ideas too, I'd love to hear from people in the chat what you do for protection magic. If you've used any of these ideas or techniques before, we'd love to hear from you, or ones that I don't talk about. We'd love to hear from you about that as well. Now, some other herbs that you can use in addition to sage or in place of sage is rosemary. Rosemary is very good for purifying a space. It can be made into a bundle and used for smoke cleansing. Now, I'm going to mention, once we talk about kind of smoke cleansing, I'm going to talk about how herbs don't have to be used in that way. We don't have to burn them in order to use them in protection magic. There's a lot of other techniques we can use. But let's continue to go through this list. It's not all inclusive, or sorry, it's not exhaustive, but at least gives you an idea of several herbs that you can try for protection. Now, the next one is really good, so good for just about everything, is lavender. Lavender is known to dispel negative energy. What's also really important about lavender is it's antibacterial and it's antiseptic. And what that means is it's really good in healing magic, and it's also obviously very good in medicinal herbalism as well. So lavender is a good one, and you can combine these herbs together, or you can use them singularly. So another good one is basil. It dispels negative energy from a space, and it helps. It has the added benefit of also helping to attract the positive. Basil is a fiery herb. It's often used in abundance magic. So I think that like basil is a particularly good one to use if you are feeling like there's some kind of negative energy surrounding you and your finances and your ability to draw in the things you want. Basil would be a really good one to try because number one, it dispels the energy, but then on the other flip side of it, it helps to draw in positive things that we want. Other good herbs to try, mugwort, and going back to my stick here, this stick is actually white sage and mugwort. Mugwort is good for protection. It's especially good for raising your vibration to a space where you're better at divination. You're more aligned with the energy around you and within you. It's really good for astral travel. I think that mugwort overall, it's very good for kind of changing the state of consciousness and helping us reach those states that might be harder to achieve. Another herb to try is black cohosh. It can be used to dispel negative energy or negative spirits from your environment. It can be a little bit harder herb to find. It's sometimes easier to find that one for medicinal purposes. But if you find an apothecary or a place that carries herbs, especially a place that's going to carry some magical herbs, you will probably be able to find black cohosh there. Another really good one is cedar. Many of the sticks you will find are also combined sage with cedar. Cedar is very good for purification as well. Now, these herbs can be used, as I mentioned, they can be used in a stick form where you would use them for smoke cleansing. You can use them as an incense. Some of them you can buy as a stick incense or a cone incense. Some of them you won't be able to find necessarily in an incense, but what you can do is you can get a mortar and pestle or another way to kind of crush the herbs into a fine powder, and then you can burn them on top of self-igniting charcoal in a cauldron or some kind of a fire-safe dish. Much more dramatic effect when we use incense and we burn herbs this way. You tend to have to use more of them, but it can be a very dramatic effect in a ritual if that's what you're looking for. But I love to kind of use herbs in a variety of different ways. Probably my go-to is incense or these herbal sticks because it's easy. But if I really want to do a working where I want to put some time and effort of my own into it, that's where I might begin to kind of crush the herbs into a powder and infuse it with my energy as I'm making it. Now, other ideas for using herbs for protection are to use them in a ritual bath or a shower. So one thing that you can do, I mean, you can always buy products that have these herbal blends in them. You can always use essential oils, things that are already prepared. But what you can also do is take the loose herb and you can get cheesecloth, put some of the herb in the cheesecloth, tie it up, fasten it somehow, and then you can hang it in your shower or you can hang it on the spigot for the bath. And then as the water is running, it is going to infuse the water that you're going to use to cleanse yourself with the energy of these herbs. So that's kind of a neat little trick to try. Another thing that you can do is put your herbs in a sachet. So these can be carried with you, or they can be hung in a car or in a home. That's where I usually put mine. So when you make a sachet, you generally are going to get a piece of cloth, and it doesn't have to be very big, maybe 6 inches square on each side. Place the herbs in the center that you would like to put in the sachet, and then you fold up all the corners, and then you tie it with a ribbon or some other way to fasten it, and you've got it. And you can infuse it with your intention. If you want to add an extra layer onto it, you can place other things in it like stones and sigils, which we're going to talk about all of those in just a little bit. But there's a wide variety of things you can do with a sachet, in particular for protection, but sachets in general can be used for any intention. So I really like that idea. I have one hung here in the house that's meant to be for protection. But you can place one like in the glove box of a car. That's a really good idea. I frequently get people asking me about kind of travel magic. If they're going to be traveling a long distance in a car, I think putting a protection sachet in your car, in your glove box, is a really good idea when you're doing that. And then a few other ideas for using herbs in protection magic is consuming them in herbal brews or teas. So any of the herbs that are safe to consume, you just want to make sure that they're safe to consume. Not all of them are, but as long as they are, you can always infuse them into a tea. You don't have to get the pre-packaged tea bags. You can get a tea infuser and put the loose herbs in there and infuse the tea. Or you can just put the loose herbs into a big pot of water, and then afterwards you can strain them off, and now you have the liquid to consume. So that's another idea. And then the final idea with kind of using herbalism that I have tonight for protection is using them to dress candles. And then that segues into our next idea, which is using candles for protection. So I will talk about dressing candles with herbs as we talk about the candles here. So candle magic is a real really powerful tool, I think, for any intention you have, but especially for protection. It just really lends itself very well for protection. And actually, I'm sorry, there are a few other herbs I wanted to mention for protection. I went through a few, but bay leaves are also very good. You can draw sigils on those. Juniper, frankincense, and myrrh, typically you're going to find that as a resin that you can burn on charcoal. So those are also very protective. Salt, sometimes people forget either white, just plain white sea salt, pink salt, or even black salt if you can find some of that, or you can make it. And then angelica. Again, my list of herbalism and my list of the stones I'm going to talk about later. These are not exhaustive lists. They're just meant to give you some ideas. But if you get really interested in it, Google, and you'll be able to find more ideas that way. Okay, so now segueing into candle magic and how we can use candles for protection. Okay. So I also, let me see, we're having some problems with the chat again. Okay, here we see a few more people. Okay, Kurt said, does my source for the sage have an online store? Very good question. I'm going to try to find out. I don't think he does, but if he does, I will put it in the chat and let you guys know. One of the places that I also recommend is Mountain Rose Herbs. I tend to buy just locally in person, but I have friends who are herbalism, like either masters or students, and they get a lot of their herbs from Mountain Rose Herbs. And I know that at least several of these people I'm thinking about are very into ethics, so I'm sure that source is, I can't say for certain, but I would assume that source is ethical as well. But if my guy has an online shop, I will definitely let you guys know. I see Tracy's here and Amy. Hi, guys. Welcome, everybody. Cindy, Pamela. She said the video's freezing. Hopefully it's not freezing for others, but sometimes there's a bad connection. And I see Joshua's here. Mary Meet and Charlotte. Hi, everybody. Okay, so moving on now to candles. So candle magic, one of my all-time favorites for pretty much any intention. I love, love, love it for protection. Black is typically the color that we think of when we're thinking about protection, dispelling energy. Now, black candles are not always easy to find. As we are recording this episode, we are just like a week and a half away from the start of Samhain season. This tends to be a good time to hunt for black candles because you're going to find them in places that don't always have them. I do know that I've seen them at Michael's before. If you go to a metaphysical shop, you will probably easily be able to find some black candles. Now, one thing about black candles is that it's just a personal preference of mine, but some black candles are simply white candles that have been dipped in black wax. Now you'll be able to tell because when you look at the bottom of it, you will see it'll look black on the outside, but when you look at the bottom, what you will often see is white, and then you're just going to see like a black ring around it, and that's an indication that this has been dipped in black wax. So it's sort of up to you. I try to find, if I'm really going to buy black candles, I really want to make sure it's fully black. And so here is a black candle that I have. Now, like I mentioned, not always easy to find. And so if you are not able to find black candles or you can't find any in stock up around Samhain, white candles are always good. White is the color of purification. So it's always good to use in protection magic. But, you know, at the end of the day, really use your intuition. What is the color of protection for you? If it feels like it's purple or blue or something like that, then that's the candle that you should use. Don't try to fit yourself into a box because other people say this is the way it should be. There's very, very, very much value in your own intuition and your own ideas of, what resonates with you. Now, you can get your candles pre-poured, or you can buy them just sort of like a taper like this, or chime candles that you can then anoint with some oils and roll in herbs if you would like to add some extra catalyst to that. Now, what I wanted to show you is I did not burn these yet because I was saving them to show people at this episode, but I have this particular type of candle that Beth and I, she's the maiden of Coven of Midnight's Flame. Some of you guys have probably seen her at Samhain rituals. She helps out at some other things every once in a while as well. But we came across this brand of candles about a year ago. I actually found a Botanica not too far from my house, and I went there and I purchased a candle for her birthday a year ago. Now the candle had such a great effect that we began, and then I purchased one for myself. Mine was a different intention. It was to draw in some abundance. But we both had such a great effect with these candles. We continued to go back. We shared it with our friends who are local here. We got other people buying these candles. Everybody says that they have a good effect. So I went and got a few to show you, and the brand is called Astral Mystical. Astral Mystical, and I'll put it in the chat. And so maybe I can't put it in the chat because I can't see the bottom of it. Anyway, Astral Mystical, and once I can access the chat, I will put that in. Now, these particular candles, at one point, we thought they could only be found here locally at this Botanica. Since then, we have found them online. Now, there is a place called theluckshop.com where you can get them. I do not endorse the shop. I don't work for it. I've never bought anything from it, but I did a review. I looked it up. It looks like it's a legitimate business, and it has good reviews. But anyway, so here are the candles. Now, this particular candle is called the 7x7 Against Everything. So this is a really good candle to use if you feel like you just want to burn away anything that is surrounding you that might be negative. Maybe you don't know what it is. Maybe you think it's coming from multiple sources. Maybe you feel like you're carrying a bunch of negative energy. Maybe you even feel like somebody is sending negative energy to you. This candle is good for getting rid of anything. Now, inside, the one thing I will say is that because these are, we purchased these at a Botanica, there are prayers inside of these little sort of like spells that you can say. Oftentimes it's to like saints and different things like that. You don't have to do the little prayer or spell inside. You can literally just burn the candle and they still work. Some of these candles have stones in the bottom, and then there's instructions inside of what to do with the stones afterwards. Sometimes you keep the stones, sometimes you get rid of them. But really, really, like I said, I don't make any money off of these. I'm not endorsing it. I'm a consumer who buys candles. And as a witch who's been practicing for almost 30 years, I've never quite seen anything like these candles when it comes to the effects that we're seeing with ourselves and with our friends. Now, here's another candle I purchased. This one is called Reversible. This is a good candle. I talked to the shop owner, and she said this is a good candle to use if you actually believe that someone has done something against you. So if you think there's like dark magic, it can happen, right? Maybe somebody does not have your best interest at heart, and they're sending bad energy towards you. Or perhaps they've even done a spell against you, who knows? But she said that this particular candle, Reversible, will reverse anything that may have been sent your way, and it sends it back to kind of like a return to sender. It sends it back to the sender. Now, I purchased these candles because I tend to have some pretty good defenses up around myself energetically, up around my business. But I had my checking account hacked into on Wednesday night. They drained all my money. It should get resolved by the bank. But I realized when that happened that there's some kind of a tear in my energetic force field that I have around me, protecting me and my property and the people that I love. And so I went and I got these candles so that I could do a spell with them and hopefully reverse some of this, get my protection and my defenses back up again. There's also another candle that the same brand sells. It's just called Protection. It's a blue candle. And there's a lot of other different intentions that are not just about protection. There's intentions for money. Just pretty much any intention you can think, this brand makes it. So again, at one point I thought these were only local. You can get them at a place called theluckshop.com. Like I said, I've never bought anything from there, so I can't speak for it, but they have these candles in stock, like many, many different kinds. And they have, if I did a little review for research on them, and they have good reviews. And Trustpilot says it's a legitimate business. So if that makes you feel, I feel like secure enough that I would order from this place if I had to, but use your judgment. But again, you can also try to find the brand other places. It's called Astral Mystical Candles. Okay, so so I've got, I'm going to finish talking about the candles and I'll go into the chat and see what others are saying. So another thing that you can do is you can infuse your own candles. So these particular candles, they're already infused with different herbal blends, different intentions. The person who makes them has already infused them with all of that. If you want to do that all on your own, get a candle. Here's a black taper candle, but you can get any kind. And then what I would suggest is get an oil, an essential oil that you like, or a carrier oil like sweet almond oil. Start in the middle. And then since we're going to do kind of maybe, let's say we're going to do some banishing, we want to dispel negative energy. What you do is you begin to in a counterclockwise direction, begin to rub the oil into the candle, moving all the way up to the wick. When you get to the wick, you want to infuse the wick with some of the oil. I usually put a little bit more oil on my fingers, come back to the center of the candle, and again, in a counterclockwise direction, then rub the oil into the candle, moving all the way down to the base. Now, this is not the only way to anoint a candle. This is just the way that I do it. It's the way I teach in my Demystifying Witchcraft course in our online or our in-person coven. Now, the candle, now that it's infused with the oil, it can be burned and the oil will add its intention to the candle. Or because you have it infused with the oil, you can sprinkle some herbs on a piece of paper and then roll the candle in the herbs. And the herbs will be coated to the side of the candle and they'll serve as a catalyst. So number one, it will make the candle burn faster. But number two, you're adding the extra layers of intentions. We have the intention of protection. We have the color of black. We're using the candle. We're rubbing it in a counterclockwise manner. We've got the oil and the herbs. And so you're just stacking essentially stacking these different modalities that have the same intention on top of each other, and then that is going to amplify the energy here. So that is the way that you can just do it if you have your own candle. And, again, you could just buy a black candle. You don't have to infuse it with the energy of these herbs or anything like that. You can always just burn it with your intention of protection. So candle magic's so versatile. That's why I like it. There's so many different ways to do it. And, your candle can also be burned for a specific protection. So perhaps you know specifically what you wanted to be protected against. Like, so for example, me and the person who hacked into my checking account, right? Or you can just use it for a general protection spell, just for general protection. Okay. So, I see some questions here in the chat, and Carrie had said she has a question about starting a new job in home care, and she's going to be in many different homes. What would be a suitable protection spell for that situation? So I think that carrying something with you, we're about to talk about some amulets and things that you can do. Going back to like an idea that we've already talked about is the use of herbs in a protection sachet. So you can get some of the protective herbs, put them onto a cloth, tie that up, and make a sachet. What I love about that is it's portable. You take it with you, carry it in your bag, in your purse, in your pocket, and then as you're going to the other people's homes, you're carrying it with you. Now, there's some ideas also coming up for making an amulet. I think that would also be a good idea for you because, again, it's something that you can carry. Now, you can always do something just in general where, like, you burn a candle, may I be protected as I go from home to home. So you can do something kind of like that at your own house. But I love the idea of carrying something with you if you're going to different locations. So listen up for when we do the amulets later, and I think that will help. Also, maybe a sigil that you can carry with, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment as well. Okay, so let's see. Charlotte had asked, are candles not enclosed in glass more potent? I don't, not that I don't believe so from all my experience of using them. It's just a different way to do it. When they're enclosed in glass, they tend to be a little safer as they burn. You feel a little bit more confident that you can kind of leave them somewhere, like the big prayer candles that people put in churches. If those tip over, they just go out. That would be like the only difference I can see. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're more potent. I think that when, like, let's say we purchase a candle from someplace, it's infused with someone else's energy intention that will hopefully amplify our own, but maybe we don't have much of ourselves in it, as opposed to if we had a candle that maybe wasn't in glass, we were able to infuse it with the oils and herbs. We're putting more of ourselves into it. So maybe that can feel a little better to people and it feel like it's a little bit more powerful. But I don't think the glass necessarily makes it potent or not. But good questions. You guys can keep them coming here. Okay, so let's go on to the banishing pentagram. So the banishing pentagram is another very quick and easy way to do protection. I like this for doing protection on the go. The banishing pentagram to me is like being able to cross yourself as a Catholic. So people often cross themselves for protection or to say a prayer for somebody else or when they hear bad news, things like that. And so in the banishing pentagram, we can also use this in a similar way. Now, there are different pentagrams that are used for the different elements, but I think that for our purposes, it gets kind of complicated. It's best to just start with using the general banishing pentagram. Now, sometimes there's disagreement on which one is the general one, but the one that I use, I will demonstrate now. And so what you do is you will start in the lower left hand corner. This happens to be the way that I just draw a star, but I'm aware that people will draw stars in different ways. So I would just kind of follow the instructions here. So you start in the lower left, and then that's the starting point. And then from there, you're just going to draw your star like that. Okay, so starting in the lower left, and then you draw a star. Now, this can be used to protect yourself. It can be used to protect your property. It can be used to protect your car. I do a lot of hiking where I'll leave my car for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. And hiking sites like the trailheads are notorious places where people break into cars because they know that people aren't going to be back for a while. And so when I leave my car and I lock it up using physical protection, right, I then also energetically protect it. And as I stand there, either I stand by the car before I walk away or as I'm walking away, I kind of imagine myself, I close my eyes and I imagine myself um, drawing a banishing pentagram in front of the car, behind the car, to the left, to the right, above it, and below it. And sometimes I even say like a little chant or a little prayer. Um, we might call it just a little spell, right? What are really prayers anyway, but I kind of think of them as more like passive spells. But so I might say protection in front of you. And I imagine drawing the banishing pentagram in front of the car. Protection behind you. And I imagine drawing it behind the car. Protection to the left of you. And I imagine drawing it to the left. Protection to the right of you. And I imagine drawing it to the right. Protection above you. And protection below you. And then protection within you. And then I imagine just encircling it with a white light, a circle of white light and protection. I usually do that practice 3 times, and then I feel like my car is protected. Now you can do that, you can imagine doing that around your house. You can do that around your own body, and so I would sometimes do that too. If I'm hiking or I'm walking late at night, I'll do that around my own body. Protection in front of me, protection behind me, protection to the left of me, protection to the right of me, protection above me, protection below me, protection within me, and then imagine encircling myself with a ring of white light. I find it to be a very, very simple protection spell that you can, like I said, you can do it on the go. You can imagine protecting other people too. If you're sending your kids off to school and you want to give them a little extra protection as they leave, just close your eyes and just for a minute, just imagine yourself drawing those banishing pentagrams around them. So just to review the pentagram. So again, you start in the lower left. It'll look reversed to you on the camera here, but you start on the lower left, and then from there you just draw up to the tip, and then you're just drawing a star. Okay? So that is the banishing pentagram. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about are protection sigils. Now, the protection sigil, the sigil magic can be used for anything, but I think it's especially good for protection. And just pausing for a question here. Let's see. Kurt had said, can you use unused candle wax after you get enough and make a candle out of it? Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. What a great way to not waste it, too. I typically like to burn mine all the way down, especially if I've set an intention for it. But sometimes there's even like not all candles burn down very well, and there's a bunch of wax left over. So you can always melt that down and then reuse it. Good question. Okay, so going on to protection sigils. So there are 3 types of sigils. One sigil is considered destructible. The next one is called the temporary sigil, and then the third one is the permanent sigil. So I'm going to explain how to make a sigil, and then I'll explain what to do in each of the 3 cases. Sigils are very, very easy to make. And let's say for the purposes of protection, we want some kind of a statement that's in the present tense. So I think the simplest statement here for protection is I am protected. But you can make that more elaborate. The more letters you use, the more the bigger the sigil may get. So I generally tell people to keep it sort of simple. Just get the intention out. It doesn't have to be really super elaborate, but you can always add to this. I am protected is the one I'm going to use. Now, what you do next is you write the statement in present tense on a piece of paper. So hopefully you can see that I am protected. And then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to cross out all of the vowels and all of the double letters. So if you see a letter repeated, you'll cross that out. And if you see a vowel, you're also going to cross that out. So then we get to this one where you can see I've started to cross out some of the letters. Sorry, the wind, we've had bad wind here. My allergies have been very bad. Okay, so now once I've crossed out all the letters, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rewrite the letters that remain. Oh my goodness. It might be something in these herbs that are getting to me. Sorry about that. Okay, so here are the letters that I have left: M, P, R, C, and D. Now, from there, this is where you can get creative and you can take these letters and you're going to make them into some kind of a symbol. God, I'm so sorry, guys. I got a bunch of herbs around me, so it's probably something like that. So, me, I don't have a lot of artistic capabilities. So, I just took these letters and I kind of did this very quickly, but you can get really elaborate here. You can pull apart the letters and you can reform them into some kind of a shape. And the idea with a sigil is that when someone looks at this later, no one is ever going to be able to look at that and say, that says, I am protected. And the idea with sigils is that witches of old, this was a very good form of magic to use because they would make these, first of all, no one would be able to look at it and know what it said. And number two, they would make these on wax and they would throw them into the fire and there'd be no evidence left of the spell work. Now, we don't have to worry about that as much with as modern witches, but still, this is a very effective form of magic that we can use. Now, if you make a destructible sigil, like I mentioned with the witches of old, you could make it on wax like they might have, or you could just put it on paper. And then what you would do, once it's on the paper, you could meditate on it. You can kind of look at it, kind of meditate on it, meditate on your intention, fold it up, infuse it with your intention, and then you'll set it to the candle flame and burn it. And the idea is that you're releasing the energy out into the universe, and then what people say with destructible sigils is just forget about it. It's done, and assume that the magic is done. So that is the destructible sigil. But you can also make a temporary sigil that you will use for a time period and then you will destroy it afterwards. Or you can do a permanent sigil where you just make it. I've heard of people making a permanent sigil that they had tattooed on their body or that they had sewn into the clothing or into a child's backpack, or that they just kept it and they put it under their mattress, or put it behind a picture frame in the house to protect the house or to draw in a certain intention. So there's a wide variety of ways that you can use sigils. If you want to make a permanent one, you can then turn it into an amulet. And so this is kind of an interesting idea where, so let's suppose this is the one that I made. If I was going to make a permanent one, I would probably spend a little bit more time than the 30 seconds I did here. But you'll make it, and once you're happy with the design, you can get clay, either self-drying clay or the type of clay that you have to bake, like Sculpey. And we've used Sculpey a lot in making amulets in our coven. It works really, really well. So you would make the amulet on it, then bake it. You can even uh, make sure there's like a little hole in it before you bake it. If you would want to put a like a jump ring on it later and make it into a necklace that you could wear. You can carry it with you. You can put it in a sachet, carry it in your bag, carry it in your purse, in your wallet, wherever you want. But I really like this idea of making it into a necklace and then wearing it, or at least putting it on a cord so you can carry it with you. So that is the idea of protection sigils and some different ways to use them. And then that helps us segue into the next part, which is we can use other things to make an amulet too. So you get a piece of jewelry and you can turn that into a protective amulet. Now, an amulet is just simply something that a person wears to dispel negative energy or to create a protection around them. Now, this is an often overlooked practice to just simply use the jewelry that you already have. It could be any jewelry. I've done it repeatedly with different pieces of jewelry that I wear, from this black dark moon ring to this green one to bring in abundance. And so what you do is choose something that you feel that you will wear every day. and or at least be able to carry it every day, or for a time period that you want to have this protection around you. And then you're going to raise energy and you're going to infuse that jewelry with this energy. And that's what that does, is it takes this jewelry from just being jewelry to now being a protection amulet. So one really easy way to raise energy to infuse into jewelry or a protection amulet is the nail bed way of raising energy. So just preface this with, if you have nice manicured nails, you know, use your own judgment whether you want to do this or not. But if you don't care, or you don't have them like I do, then you're just going to rub your nail beds together like this, and you rub it rapidly, and you would have the piece of jewelry sitting in front of you as you're doing this. You can close your eyes if you want, and then I recommend you do this for a good minute or so. So it really helps to raise the energy. You can think about your intention as you're doing it. My intention is to send, you know, some protection into this piece of jewelry and turn it into an amulet for me to use and carry with me. So you're kind of thinking about your intention, and then when you're done, you stop, and then you place your hands, hover them right over the thing you're charging, in this case the piece of jewelry, and you send that energy, direct that energy with your thoughts, with your intentions, down into the jewelry. And so this is a really, really quick and easy technique that a lot of people don't think about. Now, this can be used alone, like this in and of itself is a protection spell to make a protective amulet like this just out of a piece of jewelry. But you can also use it as part of a larger ritual or practice. And in fact, all of the things that we're talking about tonight can be combined into a larger practice. But you can also use them singularly and on their own. Okay, so that is making a protection amulet. Now, the next thing, this kind of helps us segue into stones for protection, because when you're trying to think about, well, what jewelry would I use, you might want to think about some different stones that are just already aligned with the energy of protection. So the stones can be used as jewelry, like we talked about, or they can just be carried with you. They can be placed in a sachet. They can be carried in your pocket. They can be put under your pillow when you sleep. They can be put in the windowsills, placed in certain areas of your home. So many things we can do with them, so many places we can put them. Now, here's some stones. Again, not an exhaustive list, just a few that are known to be very good for protection. The first one is black tourmaline. Black tourmaline is very good for grounding and protection. And in fact, this black bracelet I have here is made of tourmaline. Clear quartz is also a very good one. Now, clear quartz is considered the master healing stone. It has such a wide variety of purposes, protection being only one of them. It amplifies the intentions and the energies of the other stones around it. So it will enhance the protective properties of other stones. So you could consider making like a bracelet or a necklace out. You can get some beads, and you could use black tourmaline and clear quartz together, and the quartz will add the protective element, but it also enhances the energy of the tourmaline while it's at it. Now, another another stone you can use for protection is hematite. Hematite is very good for blocking electromagnetic pollution. It's very good for absorbing negative energy, and it's very good for shielding the person who's wearing it. But the one thing I would make sure about hematite is that you know that it's real, because there is something else called hemalike that is sold that is not the same thing. And in fact, I believe that hemalike is synthetic anyway. It's not actually a natural stone. So you just want to be careful if you're going to buy it. Make sure you ask some questions. Is this really hematite or is this hemalike? You can find vendors online that will ensure you that it's real. But that would be my only thing I would say about hematite. Another stone that's really good is smoky quartz. Smoky quartz gets its smoky color from being exposed to natural radiation. It's good at transmuting negative energies into positive ones for that reason, and it can help you let go of emotional baggage. So if the protection that you're looking for is kind of an emotional one, then smoky quartz might be a good choice. And then there's always the go-to black obsidian. It absorbs negative energy and cuts through illusions. And then onyx is also a very good one. You can see the theme here. A lot of these stones are black. Now, that doesn't mean that black stones are the only ones that can be used for protection, but for example, amethyst is a good protection stone as well, but many of them are darker in color. Now, another really nice one is shungite. I hope I'm saying it right, shungite. I have a bunch of it around my computer. It's good for neutralizing and absorbing electromagnetic frequencies. So it's good for protecting a person from devices. There's even some things that you can get to attach to your phone to help. I know that the jury in the scientific community is out on whether or not this matters, but for those who care about it, shungite is a good stone that can be used to kind of protect you against, electromagnetic frequencies. Selenite also is a very good stone. Again, selenite's generally going to be a white stone. It's very highly vibrational, and it can protect both you and your space. Now, one thing you can do with selenite is if you can get a plate of selenite, or sometimes you can get like a long, I would call it like a plate, but it's like a long flat piece of selenite. And you can take the other jewelry that you wear. So just kind of think about like, so this is like an obsidian ring. So these stones that I'm wearing, some of them are absorbing negative energy, right? Some of them are dispelling negative energy, but some are absorbing it. And what that means is that they're kind of getting, um, there's this thought that the stones, when they absorb energy, they can just release it. But we're kind of carrying that on us. And so I got this advice from a friend, a witchy friend, a while ago, many years ago. And it was such good advice. And she said, at the end of the day, if there's stones that you wear every day, take them off, place them on a piece of selenite, and it will disperse all those negative energies. And it kind of clears the stones, and then you can put them back on. So just a very interesting idea, especially if you're somebody who feels like you're carrying a lot of energy, negative energy with you, you're going to bed with it. Maybe consider that as a practice before bed to clear all of your stones by putting them on a piece of selenite. The next thing to talk about is the witch's bottle. I feel like I could do a whole episode just on the witch's bottle, but I'm going to briefly talk about it here. So the witch's bottle is a technique, a practice that we know we can trace it back hundreds and hundreds of years. There's houses that have been excavated in parts of Europe where they've found these buried. I think the jury, at least in the mundane muggle community, is they're not quite sure what they were used for. They're not sure if they were made by witches to protect themselves or they were made by people to protect themselves from witches. But nevertheless, these things are found in places. Now, I think this is one of the most protective practices that you can do, and it's usually used to protect your property, whether that is a house that you have or an apartment. It can be used in an apartment as well. So I'll explain how to make one, and I'll explain what to do with it. Just know it's this type of magic. It's not. What's the word? Well, you'll see what I mean in a second. So some people might think this is gross, but you want to put kind of gross things into the witch's bottle. So you're going to get yourself a jar that has some kind of a lid. I like a mason jar for this best. You will then pour things into it that are kind of gross or are like sharp or like rusty nails, broken glass, tacks, thumbtacks, things that are sharp, right? People will pee into these. Women who bleed will put some of their menstrual blood into these. You can put hair from your animals. You can put fingernail clippings, black salt that has kind of that sulfur-like smell. So the idea here is that you're putting in like things that are not typically pleasant things. Now, once you put some of this stuff into the jar, you're going to fill the rest of it with water and then seal it up very tight. Some people will then seal it also with wax, and they'll take a red or a black candle and they'll put the wax around the lid. I don't always do that. The idea here, though, is you never want to open this back up. If you were to move and you were to leave the property, I honestly would just leave it right where it was. You could, if you wanted to remove it, you could take it and just throw it into a dumpster. That's what I would do, but you never want to open these up. In the houses that I've had in the past, I've just left them buried. You bury them somewhere on the property so you can get them down deep. I have mine buried near the front of the house, near the gate where people would come in. And then as you're doing so, you just imagine just putting a ring of protection around the perimeter of the property. I rest assured that that witch's bottle on my property protects it. Now, if you don't have a house with property and you live in an apartment or a condo instead, you can still do this. You just get a really big, deep planter and then just bury it in the bottom of that. And you can put that outside of the door. You can put that, and anywhere that you want to put that. But again, the idea is you never want to open this thing. You just make it, put it there, and then it's there. And then just rest assured that the property is protected. So really interesting practice. It's one that some people shy away from. They don't like kind of the gross part of it, but really highly protective magic. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was just cord cutting, sort of before we end. I don't want the episode to go too long, but let's talk about cord cutting. So there's a bit of disagreement about how people do a cord cutting. I've been a practicing witch for 30 years. I've done the take the two candles, put a ribbon or a cord between them, let the candles burn down, and the cord separates. I've done that for 30 years. I know people who are witches who've done it. I know recently there are people policing what you can and can't do, and they say that this is actually binding you to the person. I'm telling you, 30 years of experience as a witch, never once have I heard from anyone in my personal coven or any of the circles around me who say that that has bound someone to them. I think that if you think about sympathetic magic, think about the idea of separating. We're separating ourselves from that person's energy. The spell itself makes a lot of sense, right? It doesn't look like a spell that will bind someone to you. If you're afraid of that spell, if you've heard people say it's dangerous, it can bind people to you, then don't do it. But I'm telling you, I've used it before. Now, the idea here is to create a severance of energy. This can be a severance of energy between you and another person. It can be a severance of energy between you and a place. Like you've left a job, maybe an abusive job or something like that. You can separate yourself from that. Um, you don't have to always use the candles. Like if you're going to use that idea, you take two candles, like I said, you will connect them with a cord, and then you let the fire burn down and it separates them. But another thing that you can do is I think this is a really effective way too, and this would be a good thing to try if somebody was kind of wary about using the candles method, is get a long cord, tie it around your waist, and then have it sort of draped off away from you, and then cut the cord with either a knife or a pair of scissors or something like that, and cut it off of you as a symbolic gesture of I'm cutting that energy away from me. Now you can also do cord cuttings though mentally as well. So just kind of imagine the person that you want to be separating your energy from or your physical space from. And imagine you two connected by a cord, and then in your mind's eye, see yourself severing that. I like to think of like a selenite athame coming along and severing that energetic connection that is between us. But like I said, this can be used for a specific person. If you want to cut off your energy from that person, it can also be used just to sever yourself from other people's energy in general. It is also a really helpful practice if you're somebody who's carrying a lot of energy at the end of the night before you go to bed. Close your eyes and then just see, imagine, there are cords attached to you that are what are connecting you to all these other people. And then before you go to bed, just see yourself severing those in your mind's eye and just clearing all of your energy. And now you go to sleep without carrying that energy with you. Now, we're going to wrap it up so we can get to the Q&A. But I do want to mention that if you are looking, a lot of what we talked about tonight is about kind of physical, energetic protection for like our physical body, for our physical property, things like that. Now, if you are looking for more protection of your own energy, I highly recommend that you go back and if you haven't already, we did do an episode 98. It's on shielding and grounding techniques. And I'm going to share it in the chat here. And that episode will go into some other techniques like aura cleansing, things that we were not able to talk about tonight, but you'll find a lot of practices there too, which will be very helpful if you find it's like your energy is compromised, you think you're being drained by other people. You could definitely try some of these practices that we talked about tonight, or you can, you can add in some of these practices as well in the other video. Okay, so let us move on now to the Q&A, and I think it's hard. I can't really tell if I'm seeing everybody's questions or not. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. They don't have to be about witchcraft, protection magic rather. They can be about anything related to witchcraft or to energy work or shadow work, anything that you're wondering about, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. Okay, now I do have a question that that was left for me. It's kind of by two different people, have sort of the same, very similar question. So I'm going to talk about this, and then I'll go into the chat and I'll see what else is here. So, okay, so this question comes from Jennifer, and she's asking about confusion in the witchcraft community around what a familiar is versus an animal guide. She said there's a lot of confusion in the witchy community. Some witches automatically assume that their pet is a familiar. She said, but I've heard that familiars are very different from a pet based on their purpose in magic. She said also, is a familiar one particular breed of animal, like the owl in general, or is it a specific owl that keeps visiting a person? She said, I've felt a strong connection to dolphins. Could dolphins in general be a familiar, or would that not fit the guidelines since I live in Michigan and I don't come across dolphins very often? And then Tom also had a question about familiars. He said, how do I know if my cat is really a familiar? Is it intention or is it connection? Okay, so this is a very good question. I know that there's disagreements in the community around, what is a familiar, what is not a familiar. So I'm going to just share my opinions. Just know that these are my opinions, and not everyone is going to agree with them. Now, but I also want, before I go into my opinions about it and my explanation, is that I think it's really important for us when we see people asking questions about things to not be really hyper judgmental about them. I think that sometimes the way that people try to criticize and correct people, I think it's not in a spirit of love and kindness and teaching. It's kind of mean. So I think that to each their own, like the what people choose to call it. If someone wants to say their cat is familiar, who is somebody else to come along and say that that's not true? So I think that our practice is our practice, someone else's practice is their practice. If we're trying to educate them and share our opinions, that's great. But if we're there policing, and that's kind of the energy of that we have, I don't think that we're really aligned with the spirit of the goddess and the spirit of the craft, which is meant to be an open place for everyone to share and learn. Many people have had a lot of religious trauma and abuse, and they've had people say, this is the one right way. We don't need that in our community. Share your opinion, but don't police it in such a way. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but I've seen some kind of nastiness get started in some groups sometimes around issues that people disagree on. Okay, so here is my ideas about a familiar. Now, in its most traditional sense, going back to the first use of the word, a familiar was an animal that a witch would use to send out to do their bidding. It was often an animal that the witch took control of that animal, animals maybe free will, for example, and used it to send it out and create magic or create whatever their intention was, do their bidding, whatever their agenda was. Now, as we've moved into more modern practice, I think that the familiar is less about like taking control of an animal, and by the way, too, I think it's always worth considering some of the things that we hear about witches of old. You know, really trying to research whether that information is true or not. I know that this information about familiars is true. I've seen it in places, but sometimes ideas about what witchcraft is are coming from the Christians from hundreds of years ago, and their perceptions about what our ancestors were doing weren't always correct. So many things need to be taken with a grain of salt. But as we move into more modern times, the familiar is thought of as a animal that aids the witch in her in their magic, whatever the witch is, aids the witch in their magic. And the witch is typically finds some kind of a connection with this animal. It can be an animal that is a pet. Not all pets are necessarily familiars, but a pet could be a familiar. Now, I've lived with a lot of cats, and I would not consider them all to be familiars. There's only a few that I've ever actually seen kind of arrive at the ritual space, show up at the rituals. So if you have a pet that regularly arrives when you do spell work, or regularly comes into the circle when you're doing a ritual, or really seems that they're aiding you in your magic in some way, then you have a familiar, at least from this kind of definition of a modern familiar. Now, it's okay if you don't have a pet who does that. You also may have an animal that is not a pet, perhaps an animal from nature that visits you frequently and does seem like they're aiding you in magic in some way. Then you could consider that a familiar. Now, to kind of differentiate that from an animal guide or an animal spirit guide. Animal spirit guides or guides tend to be a species of animal that you have a deep connection to. So to answer, Jennifer's question about the dolphin, um, just based on what she's saying about living in Michigan, not really having much physical contact with dolphins, I would probably say that the dolphin is an animal guide, an animal spirit guide that has come to you. Guides come to us in animal form, in spirit animal form, in order to offer us guidance. They may pop up as an answer to a question. They may come when we're in dark times and we need to be lifted. They may come to us with messages that are sometimes not always easy to hear or to understand. But they arrive over and over and over again. So if you see an animal that's showing up a lot, like a species of animal, crow, rabbit, a stag, whatever it is, that could be considered an animal guide or a spirit animal guide. Sometimes they'll show up in dreams and meditations. But I think at least the way that I sort of differentiate is that the animal spirit guide is more of a messenger, whereas the familiar is more of a helper, and the familiar is a specific animal, whereas the animal guide or animal spirit guide is a species of animal. So, to answer like Tom's question about how can I tell if my cat is a familiar, the question would be, what does your cat do when you're practicing magic? Does it seem like your cat arrives there? We had a cat named Gypsy who, when we literally, when we would initiate people into the in-person coven, Gypsy he got up on the altar once, he actually hugged, he put his arms out like this to hug one of the women who was initiating. So if you have an animal that's kind of frequently in the space where the ritual and the magic is happening, good chance that that is a familiar. Good way to know that. But it's not the only way. I recommend that people check out the book by Ted Andrews. It's called Animal Speak. I highly recommend that book. Great one. And it will go into kind of the differentiation between, what are guides, how do we work, what are animal spirit guides, how do we work with them. But that is my 2 cents on what is the difference between a familiar and an animal guide. I hope that helps. Okay, so I'm hoping at this point I can now access the chat. Okay. Um, Okay, so Joshua had said the banishing pentagram that you showed, is that more or less a simplified version of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram from the Golden Dawn? It is not the full ritual, so the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram has more to it, but yes, it is a simplified version of that you can just kind of use on the go. Kurt said he likes to use leftover letters and transfer them to the Theban alphabet when doing sigils. Yeah, totally. You can also, you don't have to use English either when you're doing sigils. You can do them in a variety of different languages. Okay, so I don't see other questions. If anybody has questions, put them in. I don't see any at the moment, so I'm just going to talk about what's coming up next. So next week on 10/29, we're going to do an episode on Samhain magic. And that's just in time, 2 days right before the start of Samhain season. So we'll talk about ways to celebrate Samhain, some spells that you can do, some practices that will help you connect to the ancestors and the energy of the season. So you can join me for that in 1 week. On 11/5, I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, whether I'm actually going to do an episode or not. One of the things I don't want to do is be in the way of people who need to go out to the polls and vote, because the polls will still be open in many places at that time. So I'm kind of on the fence. I may end up doing a episode just on relaxation techniques for anybody who's feeling stressed out about anything that's going on right now. So if I do, I'll kind of announce that at next week. The following week on 11/12, we'll be doing an episode on the archetypes of the god, which will be the companion episode of the one we did last week, which was archetypes of the goddess. On 11/1, we have a public Samhain ritual coming up. Now, our ritual is open to anybody who would like to attend. Those who are in our Shadow Seekers membership and are initiates or members of our Coven of Midnight's Flame, all of you get free tickets to it. But those who are not part of either of those groups, you guys can get a ticket through donation. So just watch near the end of this week. I'll be making some posts and sending out some emails. If you are not on our mailing list already and you would like to be, I'm going to put a link in the chat here. And if you're watching back on YouTube, you'll find this link underneath the video. But this is a link to get the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work, and then it also immediately puts you onto our mailing list. And that way you will be able to you'll get all the updates on what's coming up, when are our rituals taking place. Sometimes we have free workshops that we offer. And of course, whenever our Shadow Seekers membership opens up, you'll get notifications about that. So you can check that out in the chat. And then at the end of November, our Shadow Seekers membership is going to be reopening and to take in our next round of members. So if you're interested in working with me more closely, consider joining our membership. We do shadow work, we do energy work in there. We are kind of working to break through any of the blockages that are sort of holding us back from our path. And it's just a great place to get support from me and get support from the small community that we have. So I don't see any more questions. I'm going to try to refresh it one more time in case I'm missing anything. But if you are watching back live on YouTube, or not live on YouTube, you're watching back in replay on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to having enough subscribers to be able to monetize our channel. It's a big deal for us. So if you're not already subscribed to Body, Mind, Witchcraft, our YouTube channel, make sure you do that. And that way you also won't miss any future episodes. Leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video, so we make sure we get it out into the feed of more people. And I will see you all next time, and we'll be talking about Samhain magic. All right, until next time, blessed be.